There is a particular silence in a house where a child should be and is not. You know it if you are living it. It is not the ordinary quiet of an empty room. It is a silence with a shape, a presence made entirely of absence, the exact size and sound of the one who is missing. Maybe you still pause at a doorway you have no reason to pause at anymore. Maybe in the gray of early morning, for one merciful second before you are fully awake, you forget, and your body moves toward a crib, a bed, a room, the way it has 1,000 times. And then you remember, and the remembering lands on you like the first time, all over again. Maybe your arms, your actual arms, ache with the weight that is not in them. The world has a word for a woman who loses her husband, and a word for a child who loses a parent. But it has never made a word for you, for a mother or a father who has had to bury their own child. Because the thing that has happened to you is so against the order of the world that language itself refuses to hold it. If that is your grief, if you are the one walking through your days with a hole torn in the center of your life in the shape of a child you loved more than your own breath, whether you held that child for years or for hours, whether you got to memorize their face or only ever saw it on a grainy screen, whether they were grown or small, or never took a single breath outside your body at all, then I want to sit with you in this hour, gently, and for a while. Not to explain your loss, because there is no explanation that would not insult it. Not to rush you toward feeling better, because you do not need to be hurried anywhere. Only to keep you company in the valley, and to tell you, as honestly and as carefully as I know how, what God has to say to a parent whose arms are empty, and where He was and is in the unspeakable thing that has happened to you. And let me promise you one thing at the very start, so that you can trust me through the rest of this hour. I am not going to minimize what has happened to you. I am not going to reach for the bright, quick comforts that people offer when they cannot bear the size of a grief. I am not going to tell you that time heals all wounds, or that you will find closure, or that there is a silver lining, or any of the other things that have probably already been said to you and have landed like salt in an open wound. The loss of a child is, very simply, one of the most terrible things that can happen to a human being. And I am not going to pretend otherwise in order to make this easier to listen to. Whatever hope I point you toward will have to be a hope strong enough to be spoken in the same breath as the full, unflinching truth of what you have lost. Because any hope that requires you to shrink your grief is not worth having. So I will not ask you to shrink it. I will hold it with you at its full and terrible weight. And only then point, very gently, past it. Let me begin by just naming some of it, because one of the loneliest parts of this particular grief is how few people will speak of it plainly with you. It is the silence, the absence that fills every room, the place at the table, the car seat you finally had to take out, or could not bring yourself to, the little shoes by the door, the bedroom that is exactly as it was, that you cannot enter and cannot change, the whole house arranged around a life that is no longer in it, every object a small ambush waiting to undo you. And the silence is loudest in the places that used to be loud, the spots that held their noise, their laughter, their crying, their footsteps, now gone so quiet that the quiet itself seems to scream. And then there is the unbearable question of the room itself, of all their things. The clothes still in the drawers, holding, for a while, their smell. The toys, the drawings on the refrigerator. The bed you cannot strip and cannot bear to leave. Every parent in this valley knows the impossible weight of these objects, and there is no right answer for what to do with them. Some need to keep the room exactly as it was for months, for years. A small held breath of a place where their child still seems to live. Some cannot walk past the door without breaking and have to close it. Some, much later, find a slow and tearful way to give some things away and feel both relief and a fresh stab of betrayal in the same moment. Whatever you have done, or cannot yet do, with the room and the clothes and the 1,000 small belongings, hear this. There is no timeline you owe anyone, and there is no decision here that betrays your child. Keeping everything does not trap you, and letting some of it go does not mean letting them go. You will know when you know, and not before, and God is patient with the pace of a grieving heart among the things its child has left behind. It is the way the grief lives in your body, not just your mind. Grief for a child is physical. The empty arms is not a figure of speech. Mothers especially describe a literal ache, a phantom weight, a body that was made to hold this child and does not know what to do with itself now that it cannot. The milk that comes in with no baby to feed, the arms that curve around nothing. Your body kept its own record of that child, and your body grieves in its own wordless language. And that bodily grief can blindside you long after your mind is tried to carry on. And grief lives in the senses too, ambushing you through them when you least expect it. A song on the radio that was theirs, the smell of a particular soap, or a blanket you cannot bring yourself to wash. A child the same age in a passing stroller, with the same hair, the same laugh, so that for one impossible heartbeat, you forget. The date on the calendar your body remembers even before your mind does, so that you wake heavy and aching, and only later realize what day it is. Grief is not only a thought you think, it is a thing that happens to your whole body, that drops you to the kitchen floor without warning, that takes your breath in the cereal aisle, that visits you in dreams where they are alive again and from which you wake to lose them a second time. None of this is you grieving wrongly or failing to heal. This is love, stored in the body, in the senses, in the deepest wiring of a parent, refusing to be quietly filed away. Be gentle with yourself when it comes. Let the wave pass through you. It is not a setback. It is just how a body that loved this much remembers. It is the future, the whole future, gone in an instant. Because when a child dies, you do not only lose the child they were, you lose every child they were going to be. You lose the first day of school and the graduation, the wedding you will not dance at, the grandchildren who will never come, the phone calls in your old age, the whole unlived life that you had quietly imagined the day they were born, or even before. Every birthday that comes is a birthday they do not have. Every milestone in other people's children is a small, fresh grief. You are not only mourning a past, you are mourning an entire future that was stolen, a lifetime of days that will now never happen. And that grief has no end, because the future has no end, and the calendar itself becomes a field of landmines. Their birthday comes every year, and instead of cake and candles, there is a day you have to brace for, a day that marks the age they would have been, the grade they would have entered, the milestone you should have been celebrating. The anniversary of the day you lost them returns, dark and heavy, while the rest of the world goes about an ordinary date. The holidays that are built around children, the ones that are supposed to be the happiest days of the year, become some of the hardest. Every gathering shaped around a chair that is empty. Mother's Day and Father's Day turn into complicated, aching days, because you are still a mother, You are still the father. But the world does not always know how to count a parent whose child is not here. There is no season that does not carry their absence somewhere in it. No page of the year you can turn to and be safe. And you learn to move through a calendar that is quietly, permanently haunted. It is the question, the ordinary, innocent question that lands like a blow. How many children do you have? And you stand there in the checkout line, at the new job, at the dinner party, and you do not know how to answer. Because every answer is a betrayal. If you say the number that includes them, you invite a conversation that may break you in public. If you say the number without them, you feel as though you have denied them, erased them, pretended they never were. There is no right answer. And the question comes again and again, from people who could not possibly know. And each time you have to decide, in a heartbeat, how much of your shattered heart to show a stranger. And whichever way you answer, it costs you something. Speak the fuller truth, and you watch a stranger's face change. Watch them grow awkward and sorry they asked. And now you are comforting them, managing their discomfort in a moment that ambushed you in a checkout line. Speak the simpler answer. Leave your child uncounted, and you walk away with a private ache of disloyalty, as though you had denied them, as though their existence depended on your willingness to say it, and you had failed them. There is no version that does not hurt, and you cannot prepare for it, because the question comes when you least expect it, on ordinary days, from kind people who mean nothing by it. So let me say this, for whatever it is worth on those days. However you answer in the moment, whatever you can manage in that particular checkout line on that particular day, you have not betrayed your child. They are yours, and they are counted, fully and forever, in the only ledger that finally matters, where not one of God's children is ever left off the list. You do not have to say it out loud to a stranger for it to be eternally true. Your child is counted, whether you find the words that day or not. And for those of you whose loss the world never even acknowledged, the mothers and fathers of the babies lost too soon, lost to miscarriage, to stillbirth, to a few hours or a few days. Hear this with special tenderness. Your grief is real, and your child was real. And your loss is not lessened by how briefly you got to hold them, or whether anyone else ever did. The world often treats the loss of a baby as a medical event rather than a death, something to be quietly moved past. And so you may have grieved a whole person, with a name, with a future you had already dreamed, while everyone around you acted as though nothing of weight had happened. It happened. You are a parent. You lost a child. Your arms are as empty as any arms have ever been, and the fact that the world did not hold a funeral does not mean there is nothing to mourn. There is everything to mourn. And there is a special cruelty in how alone this kind of loss can be, because so often no one else even knew. Perhaps you had not yet announced the pregnancy. Perhaps only you and one other person knew this child existed at all. And so you are grieving a whole human being, with a due date you still know by heart, with names you had already chosen, with a future you had already begun to live in your imagination, while the world around you carries on with no idea that a death has occurred, that a person is missing, that your heart has been torn in two. You may have gone back to work days later and smiled and answered emails while privately bleeding from a wound no one could see. You may have heard, even from people who loved you, that it was probably for the best, that it was so early, that you can try again. as though a few weeks or a few months made your child less real or your loss less total. It did not. Love does not measure its object by size or by length of acquaintance. You loved that child from the first moment you knew, with the whole of a parent's heart, and the grief is the size of the love, not the size of the child. Your baby was real. Your loss is real. And the God who knit that tiny life together in secret knew them fully, and holds them now, and counts your hidden grief as holy. It is the things people say, the well-meant words that wound. Because people do not know what to do with grief this large, so they reach for something to fill the silence, and what comes out can cut you to the bone. At least you can have another. At least you had them for a little while. At least it was early. Everything happens for a reason. God needed another angel. They are in a better place. God will not give you more than you can handle. Each one, however kindly meant, lands like a dismissal, a tidying up of a loss that cannot and should not be tidied. And you are left not only grieving, but also having to manage other people's discomfort with your grief, smiling and nodding while something inside you screams. And then the worst happens, which is that, in time, they stop mentioning your child at all, as if the kindest thing were to pretend the child never existed, when what you long for more than anything is simply to hear their name spoken out loud by someone other than you. It is the loneliness inside your own home, because grief divides even those who loved the same child. You and the one you share this loss with may grieve so differently that you can no longer reach each other. One of you needs to talk, the other cannot bear to. One of you weeps openly, the other goes silent and hard. Not because they do not feel it, but because they feel it too much. And so, two people who should be holding each other end up alone, side by side, each locked in a separate cell of the same prison, and the very loss that should have bound you can drive a wedge through the middle of a marriage already broken by sorrow. And there is a grief here that is almost always overlooked, and it is the father's. Fathers who lose a child are so often handed the role of the strong one, the one who holds it together, who manages the arrangements, who supports everyone else, who is asked again and again how his wife is doing, and almost never how he is doing himself. So the father grieves in stolen moments, in the car, in the shower, at work where no one can see, swallowing it down because someone has to be standing. And the world quietly assumes that because he is functioning, he is not breaking. He is breaking. A father's love for his child is no smaller than a mother's, and a father's grief is no shallower, only lonelier, because it is so rarely given permission or a place to go. If you are a father carrying this in silence, performing strength while something in you has been destroyed, hear it said plainly. Your grief is as real and as worthy as anyone's. You do not have to be the strong one with God, and the tears you have been hiding from everyone are seen and honored by the Father who lost a son of his own. And it is the guilt, the relentless, irrational guilt, that follows almost every parent into this valley. The endless replaying, the "what if I had noticed sooner? What if I had done something differently? What if I had been there? What if? What if?" Even when there was nothing you could have done, even when no one on earth could have changed it, the parent's heart puts itself on trial and finds itself guilty, because it feels, somehow, that to have failed to protect your child, even from the unpreventable, is the deepest failure there is. If that is the weight you carry, the self-accusation on top of the loss, I want you to hear, before we go any further, that it was not your fault, and that the love which is now torturing you with what-ifs is the very proof of how fiercely and how well you loved. The cruel mathematics of a parent's heart is that it holds itself responsible for everything, because protecting this child was the deepest assignment of your life, the thing you would have died to do. And so when you could not protect them, when the thing came that no one could have stopped, the heart does not reason, it simply convicts. It goes back over every hour, hunting for the moment you should have seen, the choice you should have made, the warning you should have heeded, building its case against you out of hindsight that no one possessed at the time. But hear the truth your grief cannot let you see. You were not God. You could not have known what you did not know. You could not have prevented what was not in your power to prevent. The standard you are holding yourself to is one that no human being could ever meet, the standard of perfect foreknowledge and perfect control. And the only one who has those things does not hold you to them. He knows exactly what you could and could not have done. He sees the whole of it with a clarity your guilt will never have. And he does not accuse you. If God himself does not lay this at your door, you do not have to pick it up and carry it. Lay the what-ifs down. They are not justice. They are just grief, wearing the mask of guilt. Now, before I say anything else, let me speak to the words that have been thrown at you, the explanations, the reasons, the religious-sounding things, because some of them have come dressed in God's clothing and have done you real harm. You may have been told that God took your child for a reason, that it was part of a plan, that there is a tidy purpose behind it that should comfort you. Hear me carefully. I am not going to hand you a reason for your child's death, because I do not have one, and because anyone who hands you one cheaply has not understood the size of what you have lost. The Bible itself does not march up to grieving parents with neat explanations. When God meets grief in the Scriptures, He does not usually explain it, He enters it. So, if the explanations people have offered you have felt like insults, that is because, however kindly meant, they often are. You are allowed to set every one of them down. You do not have to believe that God needed your child more than you did, or that your child was taken to teach you something, or that there is a reason that, if you only had enough faith, would make this all feel acceptable. The God of the Bible does not ask you to feel that it is acceptable. He asks to sit with you in the fact that it is not. And there is one cliché in particular that needs answering, because it has been laid on grieving parents like a stone for generations. The saying that God will not give you more than you can handle. It is not in the Bible, not in the way people mean it, and it is not true. And it may be the cruelest thing said to a parent who has lost a child, because the plain reality is that this is more than you can handle. Losing a child is more than any human being can handle. You were never designed to be able to handle it. The promise of God is not that He will keep your suffering within the bounds of what you can bear on your own. It is that when the suffering is far beyond what you can bear, He Himself will bear it, and you, with you, and under you, and around you. The point was never that you are strong enough. The point is that you are not, and that you were never meant to be, and that into exactly that place of being completely overwhelmed, God comes, not to confirm that you are coping, but to carry what you cannot. So if you are not handling it, you are not failing. You are simply telling the truth. And the God who never promised you would handle it has promised something far better. That He will. Let me show you what I mean. Because there is a moment in the Scriptures where God speaks directly into exactly this grief, and what He says may surprise you. The prophet Jeremiah, writing of a time of terrible loss when the children of a whole nation had been torn away, reaches for an image, and the image he reaches for is a grieving mother. He writes that a voice was heard, lamentation and bitter weeping, Rachel weeping for her children, and then these words: "She refused to be comforted for her children, because they were not." Because they were not. That is the whole, bottomless grief of it in 4 words. And notice what God does not do here. He does not scold this weeping mother. He does not tell her that her tears show a lack of faith, or that she should be comforted by now, or that she is grieving wrong. The Scripture simply honors her refusal to be comforted as the true and fitting response of a mother whose children are gone. God put a mother who would not stop weeping into His holy book, and He did not correct her. So if you have been made to feel that your inability to move on, your refusal to be comforted, is somehow a spiritual failure, let this ancient weeping mother set you free. Your grief is not faithlessness. It is love with nowhere left to go. And there is something almost shocking about where God placed this weeping mother. The verse about Rachel refusing to be comforted is picked up again in the New Testament, at the darkest moment of the Christmas story, when the children of Bethlehem were killed, and the Gospel writer reaches back across the centuries for words equal to that horror, and finds them in Rachel's bottomless lament. Which means that God did not tuck the grief of bereaved parents away in some forgotten corner of the Bible. He set it down in the very heart of the story of His Son's coming. As if to say that the cry of a parent over a lost child is not foreign to the gospel, but woven right through it. Your grief is not an embarrassment to God, not something He wishes you would get over so the praise could resume. It is a sorrow He took so seriously that He enshrined it in Scripture twice, and entered Himself in the slaughter that shadowed His own Son's birth, and in the cross that ended His Son's life. You are not grieving outside the reach of God. You are grieving in a place He has already been. But God does not leave Rachel only in her weeping. And here is where the tenderness comes. Into that very lament, He speaks, not a rebuke, but a gentle word of hope. "Refrain thy voice from weeping," He says, "and thine eyes from tears, for thy work shall be rewarded." And then this: "There is hope in thine end, that thy children shall come again." There is hope in thine end, not a denial of the loss, not an erasing of the weeping, but a promise laid quietly underneath it, that the story is not over where the grave seems to end it, that there is hope in the end of the matter, that the grieving mother cannot yet see. God meets the inconsolable mother not with a lecture, but with a far horizon, a hope that her children are not gone in the absolute and final way that her shattered heart believes tonight. Let me pause for a moment, because I know that for some of you these words are landing on a wound that is very fresh or very deep. If you are listening tonight and you feel that you cannot survive this, that the weight of it is more than you can bear, please do not carry that alone in the dark. Tell someone tonight, a person who loves you, a pastor, a doctor, a grief counselor, a helpline in your country. Reaching for a hand in the dark is not weakness. It is what the dark is for. You were never meant to carry a loss this size by yourself, and you do not have to. If it would help, Write one word in the comments, just your child's name, so that their name is spoken in the world tonight by someone other than only you. And so you can see how many other parents are keeping watch in the same dark, holding the same kind of name. You are not alone here. Now let me tell you about two parents, far apart in time, who walked exactly where you are walking. There is a story in the scriptures of a woman from a town called Shunammite who longed for a child and could not have one, and to whom God gave a son in her old age, a miracle child, a joy she had stopped daring to hope for. And then, when that boy had grown old enough to run out to his father in the fields, he cried out one day that his head hurt, and by noon he was dead in his mother's lap. Sit with that for a moment, because the Bible does not rush past it, and neither should we. She held her dead son on her knees until noon. And then this woman did something extraordinary. She laid her boy on a bed, and she saddled a donkey, and she rode out to find the prophet of God. And when his servant ran to meet her and asked whether all was well, whether it was well with her husband, with the child, this mother, with her son lying dead at home, answered with two words: "It is well." Now understand what she was and was not saying. She was not saying that everything was fine. Everything was not fine. Her only son, her miracle, lay dead. She was not denying her grief. The prophet himself said, a moment later, that her soul was bitter, vexed within her. She was a woman in agony. And yet, out of that agony, she said, "It is well." And what she meant was something deeper than her feelings, deeper than her circumstances. She meant that she was not letting go of God, that even with her dead child behind her, she would keep walking toward the only one who might hold an answer, that underneath the shattering, some bedrock had not moved. "It is well" was not a description of her situation. It was an act of staggering, grief-stricken faith, a refusal to let even this sever her from God. And God met that faith. The prophet came and bent over the child, and the boy's body grew warm, and he sneezed and opened his eyes, and his mother held her living son again. Now, I have to be very careful and very honest with you here, because I will not lie to you in your grief. The Shunammite woman's son was given back to her in this life. Most of us who have lost a child are not given that. Your child has not sneezed and opened their eyes, and I am not going to pretend that this story is a promise that they will. That is not what it is. What this story is, planted there in the ancient scriptures, is a sign, a glimpse, a single lifted corner of the curtain, showing that the God we are dealing with is a God who has power over the thing we fear most. That death does not have the final, absolute word with him that it seems to have with us. That there is a realm in which children who have died are not lost forever. The raising of one boy in one ancient town is a small, bright window into a much larger promise. That the God who could warm one cold child can hold all of them, and will, in the end, give them back. If not here, then there. And notice, too, that her faith and her agony were not enemies. They lived in the same breath. This was not a woman who felt peaceful, who had risen above her grief, who had talked herself into serenity. The scripture is blunt that her soul was bitter within her, even as she said, "It is well." She ran to the prophet in fury and desperation, and she would not be put off with a staff sent by a servant. She demanded that God's man come himself, and she clung to his feet. And she said, in effect, "You promised me this child. Do not abandon me now." That is not gentle, tidy faith. That is faith with its fists clenched. Faith that argues and clings and refuses to let go. Faith offered through clenched teeth and streaming eyes. And it is exactly that kind of faith, the desperate, bitter, holding on kind, that God honored. So if your own faith right now is nothing like serene, if it is more like a fist gripping God's collar and refusing to release him, if you are saying it is well through gritted teeth while everything in you screams that it is not, then you are in the very best company. And God is no more put off by your bitterness than he was by hers. He does not require your grief to be peaceful before he will meet it. He only requires that, like her, you keep coming. And to show you that this is not just ancient comfort, let me tell you about a father who lived a little more than a century ago. An ordinary man, a lawyer, a man of faith, in the city of Chicago. His name was Horatio Spafford. He had already known hard loss. Much of what he owned had been destroyed in the great fire that swept the city. And then he planned a voyage to Europe for his family. And at the last minute, business held him back. So he sent his wife and their 4 young daughters ahead across the Atlantic, meaning to follow in a few days. Out on the open ocean, in the dark, their ship was struck by another vessel, and in just minutes it went down. More than 200 people drowned. His wife was pulled from the water unconscious and survived. All 4 of their daughters were lost. When his wife reached land, she sent him a telegram, and the whole of it, the entire unbearable message, was just 2 words before the rest. Saved alone. 2 words to tell a father that all 4 of his little girls were gone. And Horatio Spafford boarded the next ship to cross the same ocean and go to his grieving wife. And partway across, the captain, who knew the story, called him up and quietly told him that they were now passing over the very place where the other ship had gone down. The very water that held his daughters. And there, standing over the watery grave of his 4 children, this broken father took out a pen, and he wrote the words of what would become one of the most beloved hymns of comfort ever written. A hymn whose refrain declares over and over that even now, even here, it is well with his soul. Hear what that means, standing over the place where his children died, with no miracle, no raising, no bodies even to bury. The same words rose out of him that rose out of the Shunammite woman over her dead son. It is well. Not, it is fine. Not, it does not hurt. He was a father destroyed by grief. But underneath the destruction, the same bedrock held. The same refusal to let even this tear him away from God. The same staggering faith that there is a deeper wellness than circumstances. A wellness of the soul that the worst loss in the world cannot reach. Because it rests not on what has happened, but on who God is and on where his daughters now are. He could write, "It is well," because he believed, with everything in him, that his little girls were not lost in the dark water, but safe, folded, gathered, held in the arms of God, waiting for a reunion that the grave could only delay and never cancel. And do not imagine, for a moment, that writing those words meant his grief was finished, that he had crossed over into some untouchable peace. It did not, and he had not. The Spaffords went on grieving their girls for the rest of their lives. Some years later, they would even lose a young son as well. The man who wrote that it was well with his soul knew more sorrow afterward, not less. So when he wrote those words over that terrible water, he was not announcing that the pain had lifted. He was planting a flag in ground that was still shaking, declaring a truth that his feelings could not yet feel, choosing to believe, in the teeth of the worst thing that had ever happened to him, that the deepest thing about his reality was not the drowning, but the God who held his drowned children. That is what "it is well with my soul" actually is. Not a feeling that arrives when the grief ends. A declaration made in the middle of grief that does not end. An anchor dropped into bedrock far below the storm on the surface, holding the soul fast while the waves still rage. You can say it, too, not as a denial of your devastation, but as the one solid thing you reach for underneath it. And here is the quiet wonder of what that grieving father did with his sorrow. He did not waste it, and he did not let it destroy him, though it surely could have. The words he wrote over that water have gone on, for more than a century now, to be sung at the funerals and the bedsides and in the private midnights of countless other broken people, carrying to strangers a comfort he forged in the worst night of his own life. His drowned daughters did not have the future he dreamed for them on this earth, but out of the loss of them, God brought a river of comfort that has reached more grieving hearts than he could ever have imagined. His pain becoming, somehow, a balm for the pain of millions he would never meet. That is one of the mysterious things God can do with a sorrow surrendered to him. He does not waste it. He does not explain it, and he does not undo it. But he can take even this, even the loss of a child, and weave it into something that comforts others, that deepens a soul, that bears a strange and costly fruit. You cannot see that now, and you do not need to. You do not have to make your grief useful to justify it. But know that in God's hands, even this is not the dead end it appears to be, and that the love you still carry for your child may yet become, in ways you cannot foresee, a light for someone else lost in the same dark. That is the hope that the death of a child cannot kill, and I want to set it gently in your empty arms tonight. The scriptures tell us that God is a shepherd who gathers the lambs with his arm and carries them in his bosom. The lambs, the little ones, he does not leave them to find their own way. He gathers them up and carries them close against himself. There is a tenderness in that picture that is easy to rush past, so stay with it a moment. A good shepherd, at the end of a long day's journey, does not expect the newborn lambs, the smallest and weakest, to keep pace with the flock. He stoops down, and he lifts them, and he carries them, tucked against his chest, next to the beating of his own heart, where they can feel his warmth and be utterly safe while he does all the walking for them. That is the image God chose for himself in relation to the littlest of his children. Not a distant ruler, a shepherd with a lamb held inside his coat. So when you wonder where your child is, picture that. Not lost on some road, not crying somewhere you cannot reach. Carried against the heartbeat of God, doing none of the walking, held in the safest place in all creation, while the shepherd brings them home. And the same arm that carries your lamb is long enough to reach back and steady you, the grieving one still out on the road, so that you too are not walking this alone, even on the nights it feels as though you are. And when mothers once brought their little children to Jesus, and the disciples tried to shoo them away as a bother, Jesus was angry and said, Let the little children come to me, and do not forbid them, for of such is the kingdom of God. Of such is the kingdom. Your child is not lost in some void. The same Jesus who took children up in his arms and blessed them has your child now, gathered, carried, held against the chest of God, more safe and more loved than even you could keep them, in a kingdom that belongs, he said, to exactly such as these. And think about what that means for the fear that haunts so many grieving parents, the fear of whether their child is all right, whether they were afraid, whether they are somewhere lonely or lost. Whatever the manner of their leaving, however sudden or frightening or slow, that part is over now, and they are not anywhere lonely, not anywhere afraid, not anywhere in pain. They are in the safest place in all of existence, in arms that will never grow tired, never look away, never fail them the way even the most devoted parent sometimes must. There is no sickness there, no accident, no cruelty, no fear, nothing that can ever hurt them again. Every danger you spent their whole life trying to guard them from is now permanently behind them. You kept watch over them with a love that never rested, and now that watch has been taken up by one who never sleeps, who keeps them with a perfection of care that you, in your exhausted human love, could only reach toward. Your child is well, truly, fully, finally well. Whatever they suffered at the end, they suffer nothing now, and they are held. And there is a day coming, the scriptures promise, when God himself will wipe away every tear from every eye, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow, nor crying, for the former things will have passed away. No more death. That is the end of the story God is telling, and it is the end your child is already living in. And it is the reunion toward which every grieving parent who holds on to him is moving. The emptiness in your arms tonight is real, and it is unbearable. And it is also not forever. There is hope in thine end. The arms that are empty now will not be empty in the end. And the God who promises this is not a stranger to the grave. When Jesus stood outside the tomb of a man he loved, surrounded by weeping sisters, the scripture records the shortest and perhaps the most staggering verse in the whole Bible. Jesus wept. He knew in that very moment that he was about to raise his friend. The tears were not from hopelessness, and still he wept. God in the flesh stood at a grave and cried. Because death is an outrage, an enemy, a wrongness that even the one who would conquer it grieved to see. So do not ever let anyone tell you that real faith means not weeping. The tears are a failure of trust. The Lord himself wept at a tomb while holding resurrection in his hands. Your tears are not the opposite of faith. They are, like his, the honest response of love to the obscenity of death. And they are holy, and they are seen, and they are shared by a God who has stood exactly where you are standing and wept exactly the tears you are weeping. When you cry over your child, you do not cry alone. You cry alongside a God who knows, from the inside, what it is to grieve. So let me speak now to some of the lies that this grief will tell you, because grief, even holy grief, lies. It tells you that you should be over this by now, that there is a timeline, that something is wrong with you because months or years have passed and the wound is still open. There is no timeline for the loss of a child. You do not get over it. At most, over a long time, you learn to carry it, to build a life around the hole rather than in spite of it. The grief does not shrink so much as you slowly grow around it. Anyone who suggests you should be finished by now does not understand what you have lost. Take all the time there is. There is no schedule for this, and there is no prize for grieving quickly. And the love that fuels your grief does not expire. And do not measure yourself against anyone else's grief, or against the version of grieving that books and well-meaning people describe, with its tidy stages that supposedly march in order toward acceptance. Real grief is nothing like that. It does not move in a straight line. It loops and circles and ambushes you, comes in waves that knock you flat months or years after you thought you were steadier, washes over you in a grocery store because of a song, a smell, a child the same age your child would have been. You can be functioning one moment and undone the next. And that is not regression. That is not failure. That is simply what loving someone this much and losing them looks like in a human heart. There is no wrong way to grieve a child, except to be told there is a right way and to punish yourself for not doing it. Let your grief be as strange and as non-linear and as long as it is. It is the shape of your love. And your love was never going to be tidy. It tells you that to find any joy again, ever, to laugh, to live, to love the children you may still have or may yet have, would be a betrayal of the one you lost. This is one of grief's cruelest lies. Your child does not need you to be destroyed forever to prove you loved them. Learning, in time, to carry joy and grief together, to laugh again without forgetting, to live a full life with your child held forever in your heart, is not a betrayal of them. It is the truest contribution to them, because it means their life made yours larger, not only smaller. You are allowed to live. You are allowed, one distant day, to be happy again. It will not mean you have forgotten. You will never forget. Think of it this way. Your child, if they could speak to you from where they are now, safe and whole and held, would not want their death to be the end of your life as well. No child who loved their parent would wish them a life sentence of unbroken misery. The love that flowed between you wants your good, even now, even from the other side of the veil. And your slow return to living, your eventual relearning of joy, would not betray that love, but fulfill it. There is a difference, too, between forgetting and healing. And grief tries to convince you they are the same. To heal is not to forget. It is to carry your child differently, to move from the raw, open wound that bleeds at every touch toward a scar that is still tender, still part of you forever, but no longer killing you. The scar does not mean you have stopped loving or stopped remembering. It means the love has found a way to be carried that you can survive. Aim for that, not as a betrayal of your grief, but as its long, faithful maturing. And let yourself believe that one day laughter will return to your house, and it will be a good thing. A thing your child, held in joy themselves, would smile to see. It tells you that you will lose them, that as the years pass, the memories will fade, and you will forget their face, their voice, their smell. And that this fading is a second death you are powerless to stop. So remember them, out loud, on purpose. Say their name, tell their stories, keep their picture where you can see it. Mark their day. You will not forget them, and the people who love you will not forget them. And most of all, God will not forget them. For their name is written on his hand and held in his heart. And the bond between you and your child is not erased by death, but only interrupted. And it will be restored. And you can build, on purpose, the things that keep their memory alive. And there is no shame in it. It is a way of loving them still. Some families keep a small ritual on the birthday. Light a candle, visit a place, say the name aloud together. Some plant a tree, or give to something in their child's name, or keep a box of the things that were most theirs. Some write letters to the child they lost, pouring out the things they never got to say. Some simply make sure that the child is spoken of naturally in the family, included in the story, never quietly edited out. These are not morbid things. They are acts of ongoing love, ways of insisting that this child mattered and matters still, that they were here, that they counted, that the family is not whole without acknowledging the one who is missing. You are allowed to grieve actively, to tend their memory like a garden for as long as you live. Remembering them is not staying stuck. It is staying faithful, and the day will come for those who hold to God, when the remembering turns to reunion, and you will not have to keep their memory alive anymore, because you will be holding them. And it tells you, in the lowest hours, that you are utterly alone in this, that no one could possibly understand, that you may as well stop reaching out because no one can reach you in here. That is a lie. There are more parents walking this same valley than you could ever count, and some of them have walked it for years and can tell you, not that it stops hurting, but that it becomes survivable, that you can come through and still live, and even, somehow, still know joy. You are part of a vast and silent company, a fellowship no one ever wants to join, made up of mothers and fathers across every country and every century who have stood exactly where you stand and somehow kept breathing. You cannot see them, and most of them you will never meet, but they are there, all around you, carrying the same invisible weight behind their ordinary faces, and the fact that they have survived what you are sure you cannot survive is itself a kind of testimony. A rope thrown across the dark. If they came through, perhaps you can too. Not over it, never over it, but through it, into a life that is forever marked and somehow still livable. And there is one who is closer than any of them, who is not standing outside your grief offering advice, but who has himself stood at the grave of someone he loved and wept. Real tears. The God who knows from the inside what it is to lose, and who is with you in the empty room, more surely than you can feel. And there is a depth to that nearness that belongs uniquely to this grief, because the God you are dealing with is a father who watched his own son die. When you stand before God as a bereaved parent, you are not standing before a deity who observes your loss from a safe and comfortable distance, untouched, unable to relate. You are standing before a father who knows precisely what it is to watch a beloved child suffer and die, and be powerless by his own choosing to stop it. The cross is, among everything else, it is the place where God himself became a grieving parent, where the Father gave up his Son to death, so that no mother and no father who has ever lost a child could say that God does not understand. He understands. He has stood where you stand. The tears you weep have been wept by God, and out of his own loss, he brought the defeat of death itself, the opening of the way to reunion, the promise that your child, like his, will rise. You grieve in the company of a God who is not a stranger to your exact sorrow, but a fellow sufferer in it, and who turned the worst loss in history into the doorway of resurrection. So what do you do in a grief with no cure and no end? Only a few gentle things for surviving and for slowly learning to carry what you cannot put down. Grieve at your own pace and refuse the timelines and refuse the clichés, and let yourself be exactly as broken as you are. You do not owe anyone a recovery on their schedule. You do not have to perform healing to make others comfortable. Sit in it as long as you need to sit in it, and trust that grief, allowed to do its slow work, does not stay frozen forever, even when it feels like it will. And give yourself permission for the strange, contradictory things grief will make you feel, because they do not mean you are losing your mind or grieving wrongly. You may feel numb when you expected to feel shattered, and then shattered when you expected to be coping. You may laugh at something and then be flooded with guilt for laughing. You may feel a terrible relief on some days, especially after a long illness, and then be horrified at yourself for feeling it. You may be angry at your child for leaving, which makes no sense and feels monstrous and is, in fact, an ordinary part of grief. You may go through whole hours absorbed in something else and then be ambushed by the realization that you forgot for a moment and feel as though forgetting was a betrayal. None of these things means anything is wrong with you. Grief is not a single, clean emotion. It is a storm of many, some of them ugly, some of them contradictory, all of them part of a heart trying to survive the unsurvivable. Let them come. Do not add shame to sorrow by judging your own grief. There is no feeling so strange or so dark that it disqualifies you, and God is not shocked by any of it. Say their name, and let others say it. Tell the people around you that the kindest thing they can do is not to avoid mentioning your child, but to speak of them, to remember them with you, to let them go on being part of the family story. Most people stay silent only because they fear hurting you. Tell them the truth, that the silence hurts more than the name ever could. Many grieving parents discover that they have to teach the people around them how to help, because almost no one knows by instinct. And the people who love you are often paralyzed precisely by how much they care and how afraid they are of saying the wrong thing. So tell them. Tell them you want to hear your child's name. Tell them you do not need them to fix anything or to find the perfect words. You need them simply to remember, to sit with you, to not be afraid of your tears. Tell them that bringing up your child does not remind you of a grief you had forgotten, because you never forget, not for a single hour. And so they cannot make it worse by mentioning what is always already there. They can only make it better by joining you in it. Give them small, concrete ways to help, because most people genuinely want to and simply do not know how. The friends who are willing to learn how to grieve alongside you are a gift beyond price. And you can help them become that gift by telling them, plainly, what you actually need, instead of suffering their well-meant silence and wishing they understood. Bring God your grief exactly as it is, including the anger, including the why, including the parts that feel like accusation. He can take it. Rachel wept and was not rebuked. The Shunammite woman ran to the prophet with her dead son and her bitter soul. You do not have to clean up your grief before you bring it to God. You only have to bring it, and you can bring all of it. The rage and the doubt and the unanswerable why, and lay it down before the only one large enough to hold it. And if what you feel toward God right now is anger, even fury, do not imagine that this puts you outside His reach or that you must hide it to stay in relationship with him. Some of the most faithful people in the scriptures shouted their anger and their bewilderment straight at God, demanded to know why, accused him of hiding his face, and he preserved their words as holy and never once turned away from them for it. A God big enough to be worth believing in is big enough to absorb your rage without flinching. And he would far rather have your honest anger flung at his chest than your polite distance. Tell him you do not understand. Tell him it is not fair. Tell him you are furious, that this should not have happened, that you do not know how to trust him with this. That raw, angry honesty is not the end of faith. Very often, it is the form faith takes in the worst of the dark. The refusal to walk away from a God you are also furious with. The choosing to keep wrestling rather than to let go. Bring him the anger. It is still a way of bringing him your heart. Do not grieve alone. Find the others. The bereaved parents who have walked this and survived it, in a support group, a grief counselor's office, a community of the brokenhearted. There is a particular comfort that can only come from someone who has held the same kind of empty arms. And lean on the safe people in your life, even just one, and let them carry you on the days you cannot carry yourself. There is a particular medicine, found nowhere else, in sitting with another parent who has buried a child and survived it. They will not flinch at your words. They will not need you to soften your grief to spare them. They will not offer you the empty phrases because they know how those phrases land. They can say, with the only authority that counts here, the authority of having been in this exact pit, that you will not always feel the way you feel tonight, that there is a way to go on living that you cannot imagine yet, that the love does not die, and the child is not gone, and the unbearable does, somehow, slowly, become bearable. Seek those people out, in a bereaved parents group, in a grief ministry, in the quiet network of the broken-hearted that exists in almost every community once you know to look. You do not have to walk this valley as the only one who has ever walked it, because you are not. And the ones who have gone ahead of you on this same dark road can reach back and steady you in a way that no one else can. Let them. Pride and isolation are luxuries grief cannot afford. Let yourself be helped by those who understand. And tend the marriage, the partnership, the family, if you can, knowing that you grieve differently and that different is not wrong. Try to give each other room to mourn in your own ways, without reading the difference as a lack of love. Two people grieving the same child in two different languages can still, with patience and grace, find their way back to each other. And a loss that could divide you can, in time, become a grief you carry together. And be especially gentle with each other about the differences that grief exposes, because they can feel like betrayals when they are not. If one of you can return to work and the other cannot get out of bed, if one of you wants the room kept exactly as it was and the other needs to change it, if one of you finds comfort in talking and the other in silence, if one of you seems to be healing faster and the other reads that as not having loved enough, these differences are not failures of love or proof that you are no longer right for each other. They are simply the truth that no two hearts grieve in the same language, even over the same child. Try, when you can find the strength, to assume love behind the difference rather than betrayal. To say out loud what you need rather than expecting the other to guess it through their own fog. And to forgive the times you both, in your separate agonies, fail to reach each other. Many marriages do survive the loss of a child, and some are even, over long and patient years, deepened by it, bound together by a sorrow that no one else on earth can fully share with you. But it takes deliberate tenderness and the willingness to keep turning back toward each other when grief keeps turning you away. And last of all, let the hope and the grief live together, and do not let anyone, including yourself, force you to choose between them. You can believe with all your heart that your child is safe in the arms of God and that you will hold them again, and still weep every single day at the unbearable fact that you cannot hold them now. The hope of heaven is not meant to cancel your grief or to hurry you past it. It is meant to be the floor beneath it, the thing that keeps the grief from becoming despair, the bedrock that lets you fall apart without falling all the way through. So do not let well-meaning people use the hope as a way to rush your tears. It is not either the hope or the heartbreak. It is both, held together, the way the Shunammite held faith and a bitter soul in the same breath, the way a broken father wrote "It is well" over the very water that took his daughters. You are allowed to say, in the same hour, "I trust God with my child, and this is the worst thing that has ever happened to me, and I cannot bear it." Both are true. Both are holy. Let them live together in you, and let the hope hold the grief rather than erase it, all the long way home. Let me leave you with this, and then I will let you go gently back into your evening. Picture, if you can bear to, a shepherd at the close of the day, gathering the smallest of the lambs, the ones too little to keep up, and lifting them, and carrying them close against his chest, against the warmth of him, where nothing can harm them, all the way home. That is where your child is tonight. Not lost, not alone, not cold in the ground or the water or the dark, gathered up into the arms of the God who made them, carried against his heart. Safe in a way they were never quite safe even with you. Loved by the one who loves them even more than you do, and that is more than you can imagine. Your arms are empty tonight, and the ache of that is real. And I will not tell you it is well in the way the world means it, but I will tell you what the Shunammite woman knew over her dead son, and what a broken father knew over the grave of his daughters. That it can be well with your soul, even now, even here. Not because the loss is small, but because the God who holds your child is faithful, and the separation is not forever, and there is hope in thine end. One day, the scriptures promise, every tear will be wiped away, and there will be no more death, and the arms that are empty now will hold what they have lost. And on that day you will understand what you cannot understand now, and the long separation will fall away as though it were nothing, swallowed up in a reunion so complete that the years of missing them will seem, in the light of it, like a single night's sleep before a morning that never ends. You will not be a parent who lost a child anymore. You will be a parent holding their child, in a place where no one is ever taken again, where the goodbyes are over forever, where the question is no longer how many children you have, but only the joy of having every one of them safe and home. Hold on for that. Live toward that. Let the certainty of that reunion be the floor beneath your grief, the thing that does not move when everything else gives way. Until that day, your child is safe in the arms that never let go, and you are held in those same arms, and you do not grieve as those who have no hope. Rest now, weary parent. The shepherd has your lamb, and he has you.